Thanks for staying with us. Remember, 22422 is the SMS line, #NewsNight. Tonight, the future of the IEBC lies in the balance. 2 commissioners have resigned. 2 more lie in wait of a tribunal that will decide their fate. And remember, 3 other commissioners, including the chair, set to retire in January. We're asking, which way IEBC? And that's the question I'm asking to my guests this evening. Joining me in studio, we have the Senator for Homa Bay, Moses Kajwang. Thanks for making time for us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we also have the Member of Parliament for Gatanga, Edward Mureo. Thanks for making time for us this evening.
My pleasure.
Maybe I can start with you, Honorable Mureo. Which way IEBC is where we'd like to begin this conversation?
Thank you, Maura, for giving us this opportunity to have this conversation, because it's a conversation which the country is watching. And the way forward is very clear. 2 things, of course, the 3 commissioners, including the chairman, their term is coming to an end in January. The 4, 2 of them have resigned, and 2 others want to face the tribunal, hopefully, in the coming days. So basically, what you're saying, long and short, if things proceed the way they are, possibly in January or February, we are back on course, looking for new commissioners to run the IEBC. But again, that's the cost of that's provided for by the Constitution, and therefore it is very much in tandem with the law, as expected, and therefore we watch things as they unfold.
Senator Kajwang, depending on which side of the political divide you are in, you'll describe what is happening right now in different ways. You've heard what Honorable Mureo has had to say. Others are calling it democracy on trial. The question of has due process been followed or not in what we are seeing unfolding on a day-to-day basis. Where do you see things?
Thank you, Aiga, and good evening to our viewers. I was a bit worried when my colleague mentioned that sometime in January we'll probably be looking for new commissioners, which tells you that there is a predetermined outcome in this process that started with petitions that went before the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee of the National Assembly that has now culminated into a tribunal. You've got 2 commissioners who have not resigned. What makes us think that their positions will be vacant once this tribunal is done with its work? And that is what concerns us, that there is a capture, there is a hijacking of the IEBC by political players who are not happy with the manner in which certain commissioners conducted themselves in the last elections. These are matters that were taken before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, in their detailed ruling, made very interesting recommendations on the IEBC. Nowhere did the Supreme Court find the 4 commissioners culpable of any illegality or criminality. In fact, if there was someone the Supreme Court had issues with, it was the chair of the IEBC, Wafula Chebukati, for assuming powers that were clearly unconstitutional. And so, Waiga, we've been very clear that the IEBC does not just stand for elections, it stands also for boundaries. The elections were done in August of this year. The next frontier will be delimitation of boundaries. And we know how controversial this matter has been. We've been around when we've been talking about the 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 man, 1 vote principle. And the next field and theater of adventure and confrontation will be on limitation of boundaries. We see the people who are in the current government very intent on ensuring that they dismantle the IEBC as it is. They already have an outcome, and that outcome is that the 4 commissioners must go home. That outcome, we know that Chebukati and other commissioners are retiring, coming to end of their tenure. They've already sponsored a bill that is before the National Assembly to change the selection panel and the manner in which new commissioners are being picked. And I want to urge them tonight that issues IEBC, issues elections and issues boundaries have led to unfortunate bloodshed in this country. Let us reflect on what Kriegler said. Let us reflect on what Maraga said. Let us reflect on what Justice Martha Koome said. We've got enough jurisprudence, we've got enough reports, and we've got enough guidelines on how we should handle issues to do with elections and boundaries in this country. It is not the script that the current government has taken. The script that they've taken is one that will ultimately lead to bloodshed, the way it happened back in 2007 when President Kibaki decided to take a unilateral approach to selection of commissioners and to capturing the commission back then.
Senator, while you're allowed your opinion, we want to believe that Kenyans have gone beyond, solving matters, through bloodshed. And, we had a very heated election and we found a way to move on after that. But nevertheless, Honorable Murio, coming back to you, would you primarily say, what do you see when talking about the tribulations of, they've now been termed the Cherera Four? Would you say their tribulations are primarily of a constitutional or a legal kind or of a political kind?
I would say, allow me to call them the Cherera Four, for our viewers to be able to understand quickly. The transgressions which have befallen on the four are both constitutional, legal, and political. In this sense, number one, remember, IEBC commissioners are referees in a game. And the moment there is an element or they are overtly showing a bias on one of the players, immediately they're in breach of the Constitution. They are in breach of the trust which the Kenyans have given them. Number two, when you find that they are even going to break the law to get their own lawyers in a Supreme Court petition, and where the Supreme Court judges said clearly, they are just commissioners. They are not procurement officers. They're in breach of the statutes. And secondly, overtly, here you are. You find that the person who is the greatest defender of the Cherera Four is none other than Raila Amolo Odinga. Now, if you go back to history a bit, Raila Amolo Odinga has been fighting to remove the commissioners. All the history of multi-party democracy, he has never been comfortable with any of the commissioners. From Ahmed Isaac going all the way back, coming all the way to Chebukati in 2017. But suddenly, there are some angels who has just come, is now want to go to the streets and demonstrate against them. That shows clearly an element of bias. How comes he didn't support Chebukati in 2017? How comes he didn't support Ahmed Isaac in 2013 and many others behind? So clearly there is a very well choreographed into what I can call association between the Chereras and the Azimio. If you look at the press conference which they made on the day when the announcements were being made, they were clear. And by the way, Wahiga, I sit in the JLA committee. And when I see the JLA committee, the petitioners came before us. They presented a formidable prima facie case against the four petitioners against the Cherera Four. And maybe just for my friend's sake, yeah, because I think maybe just bring you up to date. Instead of the members of JLAC in Azimio coalition coming to defend or just to show the country why the Kenya Kwanza is doing wrong, they woke up in protest. And when we made a report to the parliament recommending the president to set up a tribunal, same thing happened. The Azimio members of parliament, instead of ventilating the issues before the House, they ran away. So just to answer your question, this is a purely, it's illegal because they are where they are because as provided by Article 251, when there is breach of constitution, there's illegality, that's the process. But again, it is political in the sense that there's a protest which we're looking forward to in the coming days. And therefore, you cannot be able to divorce this from the legal from politics. It's all intertwined.
It's all intertwined. Senator, several allegations have been made against the coalition that you belong to, one that your party leader has time and again asked for changes at the IEBC, but this time around he's actually defending somewhere within the IEBC, and also the behavior of members of your coalition when this matter was before JLAC and before the plenary as well, that instead of ventilating there, they chose to walk out in protest.
We have been vindicated. When we had protests against Isaka San, the then chair, and there were issues around impartiality, but also issues that were administrative and institutional. Just this past week, Oswago, who was the CEO then, has been...
just yesterday?
Yeah, just yesterday, has been convicted over some of the things he did. We used to talk about chicken gate. Kenya refused to take action. The chicken will come home to roost. And even for Wafula Chebukati, all the issues that we raised. In fact, when the Supreme Court rendered its final verdict and judgment, it's not like they said Wafula Chebukati did not encroach the law. There are certain regulations that he relied on to unilaterally announce and tally and sideline the other commissioners. The Supreme Court pointed that out as an illegality, which the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, where my friend sits in, was supposed to fix. Wahiga, this matter cannot be that Azimio members of National Assembly should be coming to a meeting to defend the Cherera 4. They should be coming to the meeting to defend the Constitution. They should be coming to defend independent institutions. And you asked whether this is a constitutional matter. This is not even a... This, what
is it legal? Driving, is it constitutional? Is it political?
What is driving the petitioners, hiding under the shroud of constitutionalism, is political and personal witch hunt. If we wanted to fix the IEBC, if we wanted to fix our electoral systems and our systems for delimitation of boundaries in this country, if we wanted to fix our electoral practice in this country, we would reflect on the report of Martha Koome and the Supreme Court. Of all the parts that we disagreed with, of course, we can disagree, but the decision of the Supreme Court is final on presidential petitions. We have not disputed what the Supreme Court said should be done in terms of institutional, policy, and legislative changes that should be applied to IEBC. And where should that start from? It is the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. They failed in the last parliament. They are failing in this parliament by starting on a witch hunt. They are failing in this parliament by starting to consider a petition where they already know the outcome. You know, my friend has just proclaimed the guilt of the 4 commissioners. And tomorrow is when the tribunal starts sitting. They started this process with an end in mind. I want to urge, for the sake of this country, and for the sake of the millions who did not vote for this current government, and for the sake of those who feel that there is victory that was stolen from one of the political players, let us not handle the matters to do with IEBC. Let us not handle matters to do with electoral reforms using witch hunt and using political vendetta. This commission, the way it is structured, you remember it was a negotiated arrangement in 2017. We were in parliament then, and it was a bipartisan committee led by Kiraitu Murungi on one side and James Orengo on the other side that gave us the position we are in. We know there are problems. And those problems have been flagged by the Supreme Court. Those problems have been flagged by our side. In fact, even the Kenya Kwanza side, I think, has a problem with the IEBC. That's why they're on this witch hunt. But we are not going to fix it by kicking a few people out. We can only fix it by focusing on the policy issues, the institutional reorganization, and the legislative proposals that the Supreme Court has advised us to adopt.
Do you think that by the time we get to 2027, based on what the Supreme Court said and anything else the Supreme Court may say between now and then, we'll have clarity on a few things that were major talking points in our last election? For example, who between the commissioners and the chair of the commission should tally and declare presidential results? And also, what does it mean to tally, verify, and then, okay, we all know what it means to declare, but the tallying and verification, it seemed there was a back and forth between the two different groups. Honorable Muriu, let me hear from you on that.
Yes.
Are you clear today on those, on who's supposed to do what in those functions?
Yeah, but before I come there, let me just clarify, because again, you know, as lawyers, when an issue is put on the table and is not rebutted, becomes the truth. This is the reality. It is the first time in the history of this country that we are censoring the commissioners using the process, the due process of the law. If you go back in history, and since the multi-party democracy, way back 30 years ago, the commissioners who have been hounded, and the person who has been hounding them is known, is on record, is none other than Raila Amolo Odinga. Now, when the country has now matured, whereby we don't use the power of the streets.
So
we use the power of the law.
The effort of one man who has gotten successive commissions.
We are using the power of the law, Article 251, to censor and find out, did these commissioners act within the law? When you do that, our competitors, on the other hand, instead of coming to entrench the rule of the law, they want to entrench the rule of the streets. That's number one. Number two, my learned friend here has said very clearly, Senator Kajwang here has said clearly, that we have even gone ahead and proposed a bill in Parliament to change the vetting panel. Maybe, and this is very important for the Kenyans to know, that the vetting of the constitution of the panel to vet the commissioners is not a motion which has been driven by Kenya Kwanza. It is been driven by the co-decision, and maybe for the
you have it there.
I have it over here for the benefit of our listeners. It is in the High Court of Kenya, the Constitutional and Human Rights petition number 364 of 2020, passed by A.C. Mrima way back in 29th November 2021, and said very clearly, the Parliamentary Service Commission, it is unconstitutional for it to have 4 people in the panel, whereas other organizations do not have any. And it even proposed that we need to reduce the number of the panel, the vetting panel from Parliamentary Service Commission, and donate those people to other organizations. And that's exactly what that bill, which we passed on Thursday, was proposing. We reduce the number of the vetting panel in the Parliamentary Service PSC from 4 to 2, and donated the same number to Public Service Commission and political parties liaison committee, in such a way that instead of the power being concentrated on parliamentary panel, service panel, we expand to ensure that the parties have a say. The Public Service Commission has a say, Law Society has a say, the Regions Organization has a say, in such a way that the new crop of commissioners are well grounded in terms of who has been able to vet them and where are those people domiciled.
Don't you see how those on the other side would view that as a suspect, whilst this tribunal is being set up?
I'm coming.
While these 4 seemingly on their way out, another 3 will be going out in January.
I'm coming to your point on what the Supreme Court said. You find why you find this time around, 2022. The petitions, the election petition are so few. My fellow colleagues in the one who does those petitions, the lawyers, this time they're going to starve because there are so few petitions. Why? Because over the years, the Supreme Court has made clear proposals on the adjustment and the amendments of the law to ensure the future elections are very, very smooth. This case itself is one way of ensuring that the level ground are well prepared. And therefore, there are a number of proposals which the Supreme Court made. And I'm sure, in the same analogy, the Parliament is taking those challenges up, and we will be able to ensure that we change the law to make sure there is a level playing field for everybody, and there is the will of the people is not adulterated along the way, and to ensure democracy is entrenched in this country.
Let's now try and envision what the next couple of days could look like. We have Irene Masit, we have Francis Wanderi, still, set to meet the tribunal unless, they change they change things over the next couple of days and possibly resign. The tribunal is set to have a pre-trial conference on Friday. What sort of pressure are those two under today? And in terms of decision-making, what do you think led to those other 2 commissioners who retired early or resigned early? What do you think were some of the circumstances that led to that, Senator Kajwang, if you're able to put your minds into what they are going through right now?
It has been obvious that this is a witch hunt. It has been obvious that this guy started with the end in mind, and the end is to remove the 4 commissioners so that we have a new IEBC that will preside over the boundaries delimitation and will preside over the next election and will preside over a referendum if any was called in between. It is clear And when I hear my colleague who sat in JLAC, who was part of the team that recommended the establishment of the tribunal, I get more convinced that perhaps those commissioners who decided to exit did it because they knew that it was a fait accompli. What I expect is if there will be 2 commissioners who will not have thrown in the towel, they will proceed, the tribunal will proceed from tomorrow. But
it's from tomorrow, not Friday?
Tomorrow, the status conference is tomorrow, on Thursday. Is it Thursday or Friday?
I think Friday.
It should be Friday.
Should be Friday, yes.
You see,
tomorrow we were told there's something else happening, which you might tell us about later on.
When a tribunal, is established to look into allegations arising out of a petition, that tribunal is expected to confine itself to the grounds and the issues that have been brought up in the petition. We do not expect this tribunal to go on a fishing expedition to start looking into issues that were not considered or that were not brought by the petitioners and that were not contained in the report of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. And so the main prayer of the petitioners was for the 4 commissioners to be kicked out of office. Those 2 who have already left office, therefore, in our view, have got nothing to answer, and they've got no business appearing before the tribunal, because the ultimate prayer of the petitioners was for them to vacate office on the basis of allegations that were leveled against them. So we expect that probably the tribunal will proceed with the 2, but we expect the tribunal to restrict itself to the grounds in the petition. We don't expect them to use this to play politics. And Waiga, even the composition of the tribunal itself, from the chair, we know the circumstances under which he was denied appointment and he was subsequently appointed. From members of the tribunal, we know some of them are business partners with some people who are in Parliament. I don't have to name names here. We'll discuss that in Parliament where we've got the privilege. This tribunal was set up with an instruction, and that instruction is get these people out of office, by hook or crook.
When you hear the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Gladys Boss, saying resignation cannot extinguish the duty of the tribunal constituted to investigate IEBC commissioners, the tribunal must discharge its duty to interrogate their conduct and report on the facts. Kenyans deserve to know why they engaged in grave misconduct during the last election. Brief response to that before he comes.
That is not necessarily the prayer of the petitioners. So the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly has no business trying to set the tribunal into a fishing expedition. What the tribunal should deal with are the grounds in the petition and the grounds in the Constitution that constitute gross violation, constitute illegalities, and that can get a commissioner out of office. I know politicians have got a lot of opinions. We see them every other Sunday in churches. The churches have been turned into political rallies and fora for making political proclamations. But when it comes to the tribunal, it must be guided by the law. It must be guided by the Constitution. And as far as we are concerned, those who have resigned, really, I've got no business appearing before the tribunal.
Honorable Muriu, is there any circumstance under which the tribunal will sit, deliberate, and issue some sort of verdict that will satisfy both sides of the political landscape, where everyone says justice has been done and seen to be done?
I think this is not about satisfying any faction in the political realm, but more remaining faithful to the Constitution. And what do I mean? My friend here, my Mheshimiwa here, my friend, is ventilating matters which ought to have been ventilated. Stage number one in the committee. Stage number 2 in Parliament. Now what happened? That side, instead of sitting and ventilating all those issues he's bringing now to the media, he should have ventilated in the right forum. So at least the majority can have their way, but the minority also can also be heard. So I'm thinking it's too late in the day. But coming to your issue, there's a bigger purpose of the tribunal, the bigger purpose is to understand what really happened behind those closed doors, where the National Security Committee was coming we are getting allegation that they came trying to push a certain narrative. What happened to who is this person who was making those calls, who had sent those people to come and beat Chebukati, because in every dog has an owner, who was making calls, who had sent all those people. So why is that important? It's because those actions border treason. Those actions, if the intention were fulfilled, this country would have been thrown into turmoil. It would be in a constitutional crisis, which again, the will of the people will be subjugated. The will of the people would not have been respected. And therefore, it is not about the Cherera 4. No, it's not about those commissioners, but it's to find out who are the bigger players behind it. So at least, number one, they can be able to face the law if there is any criminal offense committed. And number two, those kind of offenses do not get committed again in the coming election. And number three, to entrench democracy and rule of law in this country. If I had a say, I would say this, and I don't want to contradict my deputy speaker. I would say, I agree with her in terms of the fact that the tribunal is not only about these commissioners, but it's about to understand, because those commissioners were not acting on their own volition. It means they were being given instructions. Who was those person given instructions? And what were the intentions of that person? In such a way that that thing does not repeat again. And to be able to know the bigger picture in such a way that in the next dispensation, that kind of behavior whereby a referee takes side with one side of the divide does not repeat again. And that's how, Wahiga, democracy grows in this country.
Wahiga, I fairly disagree with my colleague. You can't achieve that through this tribunal. I know that one of the members of the National Assembly, and you should have reminded him I sit in the Senate, so I didn't have the opportunity to say the things that he wanted me to say on the floor. But I know that John Mbadi, and on behalf of the minority side, have made a proposal that we set up a commission or we set up a select committee to investigate what went wrong in the last election. That outcome that my brother is talking about cannot be achieved through this tribunal. This tribunal is for the removal or not of the 4 commissioners. It is not going to be... Story. That's the end of story. If you want to talk about National Security Advisory Council, if you want to talk about all those conspiracy theories that were sold to us on social media, go and support John Mbadi's motion and let us set up a select committee. It can be a select committee of members of National Assembly, it can be joint, or we can even set up an external one. We've brought Kriegler into this country previously to look at our conduct of elections. So I am sorry, this cannot achieve that objective.
And you just wanted to respond to him on that. We're about to read some feedback, and we'll be putting that up on the screen, even in regards to that. We had the National Assembly Majority Leader asking the other commissioners, what are you waiting for? Nyang'aya has shown you the way. You should also just resign. Do you support that? Would you say tonight for the two who are, we're not sure what the future is for them, that they should also just step aside?
Anyone who resigns, remember, every action speaks for itself. Resignation says something. Even if you have resigned and you don't want to face the tribunal, you say something. It say, of course, number one, you don't want that issue to be reopened and you want the issue closed. I think that the leader of the majority was saying that in light of saving what you call the hard-earned taxpayers' money, if they resign, the tribunal will wound up and we move on from there. Or maybe they decide to maybe still set up as an inquiry or whatever it is. But it was said in the light to ensure that we don't take this country to an extent of an inquiry, to an extent of a tribunal, whereas they know exactly, whereas they know their collective responsibility. Because if you find certain commissioners are resigning, others are holding on, it says something. It's on that light. And secondly, remember, Higa, this government is not even 90 days in power. We have just started the Hustler Fund. Today, we have just given 4.6 million Kenyans money. 280,000 of them have come back again and again. What we want to do is to focus on putting money in hustlers' pocket in such a way that they can be able to lift their well-being instead of focusing on those issues. So the majority leaders are saying that in that case, so at least the country's energy is focused more on reviving this economy, which was destroyed by the handshake.
Okay. Okay, you've finished that on a suspense note. Honorable Senator Kajwang, coming back to you, for the two commissioners, their options, should they be considering resigning? Would you I urge them to do so?
I think sometimes, even though the end seems to be clear, but I believe that they also have their right to be heard. They've got the right to be represented, and they've got the right to respond to the petitioners. In my view, a lot of the grounds that were raised by the petitioners were frivolous. In fact, those petitions should have been dismissed by the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. In the Senate, a senator for Kirinyaga, Senator Methu, brought a motion before the House asking the House to censure the commissioners, to carry out investigations. We spoke to the leadership of the Senate and said this is not the way to go to heal a country that has just come from a very, very painful election. And Senator Methu agreed, and Senator Cheriot agreed to pull down that motion. How I wish that the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee of the National Assembly would have refused to be used to settle political and personal scores. But I want to wish the two commissioners well, and my defense of the two commissioners is not because they belong to IEBC, not because they belong to my tribe, not because they are friends of my friends, but because I believe that defending them protects institutions and entrenches the rule of law, and also helps to clip the kind of intentions that we have been seeing with this current government of trying to emasculate and to capture any institution that they come across.
Let me read a bit of feedback, then we come and do a few more questions before we wrap up the interview. This is what Kenyans are saying online. Remember, 22422 is the SMS line, and the hashtag is NEWSNIGHT. These are your thoughts. All right, here we go. Chester Nyantika says, the good thing with history is that it's always fair. It cannot be compromised or bribed as it is with some public office holders. Kenyans will one day know what really transpired. Chester Nyantika there. Fred Okango, you say it's an act of vengeance against the Cherera 4 who legally aren't liable for anything they did in good faith in the performance of their duties. Fred Okango there. Kiberenge says the IEBC theatrics are more about 2027 than 2022. If we're to go down the memory lane and ask ourselves why 2002 elections was the most democratic and peaceful, then we may be persuaded to take the route of political parties seconding commissioners. Okay, and I'll read a bit more feedback before we wrap up. Senator, so what's going to be happening tomorrow?
Tomorrow we will be converging and having a conversation with Kenyans about their experience with this government. It is 4 months since we had the elections. It is 3 months since President Ruto took office. He made a raft of promises to Kenyans, told us that the price of unga will be 100 shillings once he gets to office. It is still at 200 shillings. He told us the price of fuel would be tamed. It has been dropping or going up by 1 shilling every other 14th of the month. He told us that there would be enough food for Kenyans. He's busy bringing genetically modified food into the country. He told us the price of sugar will go down. They are busy bringing in duty-free sugar into the country. He told us that our children will have a predictable future and an education system that will propel Kenya to the next level. You have seen the policy confusion around CBC. It is not just about the Cherera 4. We are going to have a broad conversation about the state of affairs of this nation, because we are elected to be the voices of the people. We are not doctors who should be carrying out surgery at Kenyatta Hospital. We are politicians who speak on behalf of the people. And that is what we are going to do in Kamkunji. And it is exactly the same thing the president and his deputy has been doing in churches. What we have decided is that we are not going to desecrate churches and turn shrines into places for pouring political vitriol. Every Sunday, we expect some insults from the Kenya Kwanza side, and unfortunately, the insults come from churches. I want to tell the church to encourage politicians, if they want to have political discourse, let them do what we in Azimio have done. We have given notice to the nation, given notice to the police. We have said we are going to meet in Kamkunji. We are going to have a political conversation. People will start flocking in at 10 in the morning, and it will be a day-long thing. If you want to do politics, call a political meeting. Do not hide behind churches.
Okay.
Do not go to shrines. Do not desecrate altars, using those altars to insult other political players and to, intimidate other political players.
Okay.
That is what we are running away from, and we are going to do our politics in broad daylight.
It seems your scorecard rating of the Kenya Kwanza government might be on the lower side from what you said, but Honorable Murio, I'm sure, has a different opinion altogether.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I think the leadership of Kenya Kwanza, because we are bound by the rule of law and the Constitution, we have said a couple of things. Number one, we have told our competitors in Azimio they need to play their rightful role as the opposition. Wherever we don't do the right thing, let them caution us. Let them say it and say openly. And therefore, going for a political rally, that is normal. In fact, an opposition's role is to play a role of a government in waiting and say the things which the ruling party is not doing. So I want to commend them. The only thing we are saying, they should not say they are going to have a political conversation and then you have protests. Because though under Article 24, they are allowed to picket, to protest and do all other things, but remember, that law has a limit because they should not infringe on the rights of other people as provided for by Article 28. Now, therefore, clearly we have said we shall provide security. We shall make sure that they picket, they protest, and we have also said, I wish they could give us their timetable. Whether they want to vote, whether they want to picket in the morning or to picket in the evening.
Said from 10 o'clock.
We shall be able to provide security, whether they want to protest for a day or a week or a month or a year, we have no problem. It's their right. In fact, that's their role. But what you're saying long and short is this. As they do that, they should not infringe on the rights of other people. And secondly, matters of the houses, both the Senate and the Parliament, need to be ventilated in Parliament and in the houses. Remember, those two houses are houses of debate. And Kenyans are looking up to them. Instead of them running away from debates inside the houses, they are running away. And secondly, remember, here we are a situation whereby this government is not even 90 days in the office. We are not even 100 days in the office. But we are saying, it's okay, we like the pressure, we work under that pressure, but let them remember that we have just unleashed, a week ago, we have just unleashed the Hustler Fund of 50 billion. So far, 4.8 million Kenyans have taken up the money. So they need to let the hustlers, first of all, establish their business. They need to ensure the hustlers go back to business. And as they picket, as they demonstrate, they should not at all disrupt the normal life or other Kenyans who are not in that process. And finally,
he raised several campaign promises that he says he has not seen being fulfilled. Do you agree with him on that?
Of course not. I don't agree with him at all. Now, let's talk about UNGA. UNGA hit 200 when Azimio and their chairman were on the seat. We are trying to clear their mess. They borrowed 8 trillion in 5 years. We are trying to bring up their mess. So bottom line, what you're saying long and short, you cannot bring a mess as a handshake partner and their Azimio chairman, and then on the other hand, you're telling us, quickly come over and clear our mess in the less than 100 days. We shall do it. It's okay, talk to Kenyans. Kenyans are intelligent enough. They know the genesis of what the problem we have. They know why we don't have, our UNGA is at over 200 shillings. They know why the fuel is expensive. They know why they don't have money in their pocket. Courtesy of Azimio, their chairman, and the Azimio leader. But it's okay. We are not running away from our responsibilities. We will make sure that we put everything straight. It's fine. They can go and protest, but we are telling Kenyans, let's remain steadfast. Let's not get distracted by the noises. Furthermore, they are playing their rightful role of keeping our government in its toes.
And that is something that you are following keenly. As you then respond to him, what do you make of this proposal that President William Ruto is expected to table proposal on the position and office of the official opposition leader before the National Assembly on Thursday? Is that surprising to you? Are you expecting it?
It is unconstitutional. You cannot do it within the framework of the current constitution.
Without going to the people.
You must make constitutional amendments, and that cannot be changed by parliament. That has to be a referendum question. And they told us that referenda are a waste of time, and yet it is a constitutional right that Kenyans have. And when it comes to the rights in the constitution, my friends here make it look like they are doing us a favor by allowing us to go to Kamkunji. You are doing us no favor. That is a right that is guaranteed to us in the Constitution. In fact, it is not granted by the Constitution. It is granted by the people. There's this thing, thinking that you are in government. Now I saw my friend Kindiki saying that, okay, you guys can go and protest. It's like a parent telling you, okay, you can go for that show, but don't eat sweets on the way. That's bloody nonsense. That right is there in the Constitution given by the people. All we need to do is to notify. And we have not given any indications that we will not be peaceable. And that is a word that is used in the Constitution. They keep telling us that we should not infringe on other people's rights. What about this government that is infringing on people's right to health by bringing GMOs into this country? Infringing on people's right to property by destroying businesses here in Nairobi in the guise of fighting noise. This government that is killing people's right to economic well-being by killing maize farmers in the North Rift, by killing sugarcane farmers in Western Kenya, through dumping of duty-free sugar. They are more guilty of infringement of the rights of Kenyans than the opposition. And we in the opposition, if we needed to be violent, we ought to have been violent around the election time. We ought to have been violent when the results were announced, and we surprised them. They thought that there would be violence that could be used as a bogey or as an excuse to clamp down on the opposition. We have come of age. We are able to have a conversation, and Wahiga, tomorrow we want to show Kenyans how callous this government is. You've heard him saying that Kenyans know that it was Handshake Brothers that increased the price of unga. Where was William Ruto? In fact, this persecution of the Cherera Four, William Ruto contradicted and opposed President Uhuru Kenyatta for 4 straight years. No one brought a petition for his removal. So we want you to tell Kenyans who are sleeping on an angry stomach, tell Kenyans who are dying in northern Kenya, tell farmers in Kitui whose farms are being raided by camels and cows from other counties, tell Kenyans who are stuck with sugarcane, tell Kenyans who are stuck with maize that all these problems were caused by Uhuru Kenyatta. You have had a full season to harvest maize. Instead of tapping into that, you're bringing GMO. Why? Because it promises huge commissions for the people who spend their money in campaigns. We are going to tell Kenyans all that.
So tomorrow is a day of revelations, is that
of revelations, because we know how this government works. This hustler fund that they're talking about, you can talk politics, but him and I are professionals, and at times it's important for us to tell people the truth.
And him and you are supposed to keep government accountable.
Yes.
in your respective houses.
There is something called inflation. When you provide free money to the economy, when you inject free money to the economy, you cause inflation. And William Ruto is an expert in causing inflation, because together with Jirongo, when they were in YK92,
now that is,
they injected...
That is not relevant to this
No, I'm just bringing it. YK92 okay. Injected money into the economy. People were getting money that they did not work for. Right now, the hustlers...
It is a fact that business people from the very beginning have been crying for credit. That one, whatever term you use, you cannot run away from, Senator. It's been a cry and a campaign promise.
From a monetary policy perspective, when you inject cash into the economy, free and easy money, it overheats the economy and brings about
6,000 stipend that your side was promising, which had promised was free. Would that not have had the same effect?
It was tied to a lot of things. It was tied to NSSF. And remember, it was not just for everybody. It was for those who were vulnerable. It was an extension of the OVC. And that's why we are a social democratic movement. Those people who are able to do business, who are able to pay taxes, we were not going to give them that 6,000. But the conversation, Wahiga, I invite you to have with economists, call the Central Bank of Kenya governor. What is the impact of free money into the economy? Look at what happened to the US when Joe Biden put in a huge injection of cash as a result of the COVID pandemic. Right now, mortgage rates in the US have moved from 3% to 6%. The same thing has happened in the United Kingdom. Look at what is happening in Ghana. Ghana is almost collapsing because of populist economic policies. So this thing of telling us from morning to evening about the Hustler Fund is trying to assume that Kenyans are not clever enough to appreciate monetary policy, to appreciate how inflation is brought about, and to appreciate how that impacts on the economy.
Okay. You've said a lot that I'm sure he wants to respond to. Go ahead.
I think with a lot of respect to Senator Kajwang, it's good to tell Kenyans the truth. Number one, on Hustler Fund, there is no free money. We are charging 8% on that money. And you borrow, within 14 days you pay the money, and you borrow again. What we are doing, we are making funds available for the low Kenyans who have never had an opportunity to borrow. There is no intermediary other than your phone. And it's having impact to date. It's having impact right now. Kenyans are able to borrow. And that's why we came in and stepped in and said, we want to bring down dynastic tendencies. People who are insensitive of the common Otieno, common Wanjiko down there, who borrows the money overnight, buys boga, takes them to Gekomba, sells them, and pay that money. My Ilana friend here and a senator cannot understand the dynamics because most likely he belongs to a different realm altogether. Number two, the Azimio leader has gone on record saying that they are going to protest because the Kenya Kwanza government promised Hustler Fund without any interest. Now they are going to protest because it has interest. It's a contradiction from what my friend Senator here is talking about. On one hand, his party leader, he's going to protest because the Hustler Fund has a bit of interest. On this other hand, his senator, here he is telling Kenyans that we are getting free money, and which is not correct. And I think most likely I want him to go and get a better brief from his party boss. The second issue is on we are cleaning the mess which was brought up by the handshake brothers. That's the mess we are cleaning up. And we are saying they remove the subsidies in agriculture. That's why the people in the Rift Valley cannot be able to sell the maize cheaper because the cost of input is high. And we are saying, as Kenya Kwanza government, we are bringing cheap fertilizer, cheap seeds, so at least people can be able to grow food, and food is cheap and affordable to all Kenyans. If that's a crime of bringing down the prices of our food, that every Kenyan can be able to afford it, then I will say, Wahiga, we are guilty as charged. But here we are. The mess which has been brought by my partners here, our competitors here, is a mess which you are trying to clean up. And yet, they are not going to give us an opportunity. But you are saying it's okay. We hasten to ensure that we empower our people. There is going to be cheap food. But we want them, once they go to the podium, let them tell the Kenyans the truth. Who caused this mess? Where were they? Where were they? They were partners. Their party leader the Hajke brothers. They are the ones who brought the. I
think the persuasive nature of politicians from both sides will confuse Kenyans. As we wrap up this conversation, do you support a proposal for an office of the official opposition leader?
I believe in dynamism. There is no strict interpretation of the Constitution or the laws. I believe in dynamism. And why is that important? I wish we can have a constitutional amendment whereby we create an office. Currently, as it is only the office of the majority and the minority recognized under the Constitution. Mm-hmm. But I wish we can be able to create an office of the leader of the opposition. Because, number one, we shall remove the notion of winner takes it all. Number two, we'll give the second runner-up in an election a role to play officially under the Constitution to be able to put the government in check. Any Commonwealth law provides that a leading opposition, they are the government in waiting. In fact, but as of now, I would say this, nothing stops the opposition, the Azimio, from making sure that they play a major role. Remember, they have a leader of the minority who has an office and powers to be able to put the government in check. As it is right now, there's nothing holding them, but there's no harm if you can have an opportunity to entrench that in the Constitution.
Okay, let's wrap this up. Your final word on this, Senator.
A strong opposition is good for the country. The president, when he was getting sworn in, reminded us, it was, I think, with a little bit of mischief, that there'll be no handshakes and that he expects us to play that role. We are going to play that role robustly, and tomorrow we shall be questioning the delivery of promises. We don't want to be told about the Hustler Fund. We want to know what is the price of unga today and what was a promise. The price of oil today and what was a promise. The direction of CBC. We want to be told the fate of maize farmers in Rift Valley and sugarcane farmers in Western Kenya when they are already bringing in duty-free sugar to dump into the market. Those are the things we want to talk about. Those are the issues I talked about. Inflationary pressures. That one you can call monetary policy experts.
We'll call the economists.
Tell you that you inject money into the economy without proper thought, it heats it up. But when it heats it up, prices of everything goes up, and you are locked in a vicious cycle of inflation and high price of products. You know, finally, I'm very convinced that these guys in Kenya Kwanza, number one, they remind me of Donald Trump. Donald Trump didn't expect to win. And when he won, he started asking himself, now, what do I do with this victory? And that is why 4 months after election, they are still casting their glances at Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, talking of the handshake brothers, forgetting that William Ruto was a deputy president, was a member of the Security Council, was a chairman of the Intergovernmental Budget Committee. If you're going to blame Uhuru, please include William Ruto in that mess.
Briefly, any last word? We can close it.
Thank you, Maura. Number one, I think as leaders we have a great responsibility to steer this country to heights of prosperity. And there's no country which grows without the rule of law. We have a history of our competitors going all the way, swearing themselves illegally, even organizing coup. We just want to say protests have no time in this dispensation.
Okay.
What we have right now is engagement and the rule of law. And I ask our competitors on the other end to just oblige. We have now moved on. It's just about engagement, and we lose the path of law to ensure that any differences are resolved that way.
Okay. We're going to take that as the final word. I'm afraid to allow them to say any more because we may have a back and forth. Let me thank my guests who really painted a picture of the state of the nation and the thoughts of both political factions. We've had Edward Mureo, who's the MP for Gatanga, here with us. Thank you for joining us. And Senator of Homa Bay, Moses Kajwang, thank you for joining us as well. And for what they've talked about, it's going to be a busy week. Tomorrow, public consultation, Kamkunji. We'll get you details from that. And of course, the pre-trial conference on Friday. Citizen TV will also bring you everything you need to know from that particular event as well. And so many thanks to both of you, and thanks to our viewers who've been tuned in, watching us Kenya, East Africa, around the world. Asante sana for your time with us today. On behalf of the whole team that's made this broadcast possible this evening, and my sign language interpreter tonight, who's been Wilson Mushora, asante sana. Have a good night. We'll see you soon. Goodbye for now.